Good evening, friends. Happy Thursday. And that means it's time for a mystery wine. We have a lovely one, a white this evening. Who's with us? Hey, Isabel, how are you? Great to have you with us. Sharon Roeder's watching too. Hi, Sharon. It's great to have you with us. And yes, wine friends. What a great combination, a contraction of words that is, a wine friend. Somebody who gets wine, appreciates wine, and all the better you get to share experiences around wine with those people. And we are all wine friends, and that's a great thing. The power of wine to connect folks is long and enduring. I was just exchanging a couple of texts back and forth with Christine Vrooman, who is the proprietress of Ankita Ridge. And if you've had a chance to try those wines, you'll know they're great wines. And the 17 in particular, I just had a chance to share with a friend of mine who I haven't had a chance to see for a long time. And we connected in culinary school and had a chance to visit with each other and share that bottle. And I haven't seen Christine in a long time, and I was sharing with her the joys and delights of that particular wine. And those bonds that are created while sharing wine, they transcend time and don't require consistent contact, but the times you do have with each other endure. And so the times we're spending with each other are wonderful. And the Sanders are with us tonight, Matthew Fitzsimmons with us tonight, Jan Burse is here tonight, Kathy's with us tonight, all wine friends and creating together long and lasting experiences that will endure. They are for me, for sure. The Grassics are back, which is awesome. The McCartys are joining us tonight, too, which is fantastic. We've been sharing wine for, well, gosh, Anne and John, what do you think? Years at this point, which is wonderful. Susan, hello to you. That has a particular smell, doesn't it? Candy Harris is here along with Kathy and Kevin. Hey guys, great to have you with us. I'm gonna grab my spit cup, which I left a little too far away, although it already smells so lovely, I'm not sure I'm gonna wanna use that. One of the delights that I have certainly in doing this, and hello Kestenbaums, Alicia's with us too, yay. Having moved to Maryland, they don't get a chance to join us or get the wines to do this as often as they once were able to. Is to see that all of you kind of begin to ping each other and share back and forth. And when I find a moment on Facebook, for example, and people are talking about their wine experiences and food experiences, and a number of you will reply to each other's posts, it's great, it's rewarding. So let's get down to this wine. Alicia's excited to have this wine and to go into it, and Brenda and Tony are excited to get into the white wine for this evening, so let's go for it. What do you see right off the bat, guys? Is this a light wine? What's the color? How does this appear to you? Does it have bubbles? What do you know about this wine just from looking at it? It's aromatic in a lovely way, I agree, Susan, but from a visual standpoint, we'll get to the aromatics in just a second. For those of you that don't have the wine, that's a little bit more golden in color, isn't it? It's not amber, but it also isn't kind of pale. It has that more gold flint to it. And so lemony color, Krista's saying, yeah, and clear for sure. And I think I just saw someone note a comment about a webinar earlier today. Thank you for watching. We had a wonderful time doing a special webinar with the Economic Development Council for Northern Virginia, which was great. I got to chat with my friend Andrea, who's the proprietor of Hidden Creek, where we get a lot of our greens and some other things. Johnny's saying it's clear, pale and gold. Jan Nelson, pale, lemon, strong nose, yes. And thank you, Jan, for watching. I appreciate that. So yes, pale, lemon, a little bit of gold color to it. Pronounced nose. So the nose has popped up a couple times for us. We're saying it's pronounced. Susan, welcome. What do you think? Pronounced with what? What are you smelling? Fruit, earth, wood. Let's work fruit. What fruit are you smelling if you're smelling any? And is this fruit citrusy? Is it stone fruit? Is it tropical fruit? Where are you pegging the fruit profile? And then within that fruit profile, let's get more specific. And is that fruit fresh fruit, dried fruit, cooked fruit, medicinal fruit? Eric's thrown out some peach. Good. Grapefruit from Jan. There's kind of a grapefruit pithy element there. Ripe fruit from Kathy. And flowers, yes. Grapefruit and tropical coming from Krista. Yeah, there's a citrusy lemon element. Brenda, I pick up that too. Lemon from Chris Shirley and the Shirleys. Courtney, I imagine, is there too. Stone fruit, apricot or peach and fresh. Candy's thrown out cooked fruit with peachy quality. The Swanbergs are thrown out tropical. Susan's saying lemon zest, peach, and fresh. So we've got stone fruit. When we say stone fruit, it's a pitted fruit with a stone in it, right? Or the pit in it. Apricot coming from the Grassics and some muted citrus notes from Alicia and the Bretzes. Yeah. Is the fruit the most pronounced part of the aroma? We're talking about fruit right now because we were picking on the acronym FEW, F-E-W, fruit, earth, wood. But is it the most pronounced quality, or are you picking up what the Swanbergs are, which is vanilla? And so that would be more of a wood quality. Wood because the vanilla scent comes probably from the use of oak and the char that's on the oak barrel. Jan's noting that it's fresh tropical and slightly sweet in terms of its fruit profile. Not necessarily sweet, the wine, but the fruit profile is sweet, which would indicate sort of a ripe fruit quality. Or even a dried one like Candy notes too, because a dried fruit has that concentrated sweetness to it. And KC is watching it with us this evening. Great. So yeah, there's a vanilla quality, there's a wood quality on this nose for me that's more prominent than the fruit quality. And Robert's seeing things, or smelling things, I should say, differently than I. He's saying some vanilla, but the fruit is more prominent for him. And Alicia's saying peach, but underripe, not really overwhelming. Susan's saying no earth, vanilla, and butter. She's maybe saying no to a different question, and then earth, vanilla, butter. There's a little buttery quality for sure, right? And a vanillin element, and there's a toasty quality that Melanie is thrown out there. Lemon, vanilla, toasty, all together is a lemon pastry. Yes. Yep. We had some, the family and I on Tuesday had a little lemon chess pie. You know, maybe we were smelling a little lemon chess pie and their wine equivalent. Yeah. Oak, vanilla, and apricot. Okay, so, wow, yeah. It's definitely got some of those oaky elements. So oak presents itself, whether you're talking about European oak or French oak in particular, Slavonian oak, also another option, and you have American oak, and they present differently, generally speaking, in terms of their aroma. Alicia is saying that her little Finn, her young one, is perplexed by someone just swirling and swirling and swirling a glass and not really drinking it. Candy, you're headed to where I am, which is an early indicator for Chardonnay, mostly because of Chardonnay being a grape that does oftentimes get cloaked with oak. Other grapes certainly also are reared in oak, but this Chardonnay has sort of that expression, or Chardonnay in general can have and wear that expression beautifully, right? Jan's thrown out, and Jan, you're kind of working the Sauvignon Blanc angle and some grassy angle. It sounds like you're angling for some Sauvignon Blanc. And Courtney, I agree, this smells divine. It does. It smells regal, doesn't it? I mean, there's a point at which, in my tasting career, kind of buying for restaurants, that I keyed in on a way to describe a wine like this for me, and it was oftentimes Chardonnay that we're tasting that had this presentation where I just go, it smells like money. And that meaning that the oak barrels they used cost a good deal of money. And so while the fruit's present, what you're smelling is the addition of an expensive oak barrel to give a character to the wine. And so that's certainly, I think, one thing we should be thinking about in the context of this particular wine. But because everybody, let's go back to the fruit then. If we're thinking there's a good dollop of oak, and that oak might indicate Chardonnay, before we even get into tasting this, And it is showing us that there's oak there. That's hard to say that oak comes from a certain place, because you can buy that oak in any place typically, right? So you can be a French winemaker and buy French oak. You can be an American winemaker and buy French oak. You can be a Spanish winemaker and buy American oak. So oak isn't where it's going to give you a tell on the place. So you got to go back to the fruit and start thinking a little bit about what the fruit tells you in terms of its ripeness or underripeness to kind of pick out where you think it might be going. Before I get there, though, Chris is saying she's almost thinking about dry Petit Manseng. Well, there is some of that tropical character. Apricot and peach, I don't know that we would be headed that direction with Petit Manseng. I get much more about pineapple, typically. But it's a brave new world and a new world with regard to Petit Manseng. And I think with each vintage that passes, especially here in Virginia, producers are figuring out more and more interesting ways to make that wine. And I think we'll start to see a wider spectrum, perhaps, of the fruit profile. So let's not take Petit Manseng off the table. And right off the bat, too, we don't know yet whether or not it's dry or sweet, but you're indicating, based on kind of what you're smelling, what you're seeing, that you think it might be dry. Susan's also noting that she thinks there's a little bit of grass, hay, and she thinks it had oak and lees and maybe a little malolactic fermentation, but not typical of Sauvignon Blanc. And I would agree, this doesn't present a typical profile of Sauvignon Blanc, especially one that's a single varietal. We could go and throw into the hopper the idea of a white Bordeaux, which is Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc, and oak aging. That would be intentional. And Isabel's thrown out Viognier, and I think, yes, Viognier should be in the running. We got, Kathy, I believe you threw out a little bit of floral quality, and apricot was thrown out, and that can kind of be an indicator here. I'm not getting a whole bunch of honeyed element, and sometimes I pick up that, but even as I swirl a touch more and I just say that to myself, I do smell something honeyed. So honey, a little Viognier. We could be talking Bordeaux blend in terms of Sauvignon Blanc Semillon, maybe. We could be talking, for sure, Chardonnay, right? And so Chris is already helping us kind of narrow down the world of Chardonnay and saying cool climate Chardonnay. And Chris, you're saying that because of the fruit quality, I imagine. So the fruit quality being the caliber of the fruit, I should say, not necessarily quality. There's quality fruit, it seems, in here, but if we're talking about cool climate Chardonnay versus warm climate Chardonnay, the aromas of the Chardonnay will be more tropical fruit, right? It'll be, let's put at one end of the spectrum, if we're talking cold climate Chardonnay, green apple. If we're talking about really ripe, warm climate Chardonnay, we're talking about banana, guava, tropical elements of fruit. And you can have stone fruit and variations in between, right? So Kathy's thrown out more of a warm climate due to ripeness. And I think we're seeing little elements more of the moderate to more ripe kind of presentation. So the apricot and white peach are giving you, I would say, more ripeness. So I'm thinking like warm climate, but cool vineyard. So think about we can do this two ways, right? So let's say we're talking about Burgundy, because Chardonnay is grown in Burgundy. It's the home of it, if you will. Let's think about then, if it's grown in Burgundy, we would typically call that a cooler climate expression, an old world expression, but maybe a warm vintage. Or we could be talking about, say, California, and either a cooler vintage, which it's harder to pick out and parse out necessarily a cooler vintage, but maybe a cooler site. And so we could be talking Sonoma Coast as opposed to Napa Valley. We could be talking the Sonoma appellation versus the Central Coast, where you might get a little more ripeness. And so the site within a warm place, a higher elevation place versus a lower elevation place, that might give you a coolness at night. So we could be thinking about something like in California, I was just looking at some beautiful wines that we're just trying to bring back in from Domaine or Mount Eden in the Santa Cruz Mountains, right? So it's California, it's ripe, but high elevation and coastal, and so you get this cooling effect. And so you get ripe flavors and freshness and acidity and brightness and texture and wood and all of those things. In fact, maybe. So cool. All right, let's taste this wine and see if what we're smelling in the apricot, white peach, some of that citrusy note, some of the tropical quality, a lot of that wood personality, and start to work too on the taste. So let's work on acidity, let's work on tannin, let's work on body. first to help us weed out or to head back in a direction of a particular varietal. So right when you're thinking about Viognier, if this is Viognier, it shouldn't have a bunch of high acidity. Viognier is not a grape that usually gives a bunch of acidity. So let's look at that, for example, as we taste and keep that in mind. Wow. Let's stick with acidity for a second. Acidity, perhaps you're gonna get it in different places based on who you are and your palate, but where are you salivating? Where does acidity attack you or latch onto your tongue? I get it on the sides, and I get it underneath my tongue. This one zinged me right in the middle of the tongue too, and I'm still salivating. So if you're salivating for a period of time that's 10 seconds or longer, you're talking about medium plus, and then if it continues even further, you're into medium high, into high acid, right? And this is just starting to dissipate. So I'd say this is medium plus salivating quality, and so medium plus acidity in this wine. I would rule out Viognier based on that, but to Kathy's earlier point, and an illustrative point that's important, is that this has the texture and sort of an oiliness that you might get from Viognier. So it's good to think about that. So when you're tasting wines, you don't need to rush to one varietal. You should start to build like, well, it could be these varietals, and you might have one that's really ahead because you think it really fits more of the descriptors you've given it, but it's not a bad idea to have a series of them. And whenever we taste something with texture, whenever I taste something with texture and high acidity, I also think of Petit Manseng, but I think of Chenin Blanc too. And I just throw that in there because you can get Chenin Blanc with wood, and you can get Chenin Blanc with acidity, and you can get Chenin Blanc with some appley qualities to it. I'm not so much sure about the apricot element. Sometimes the honeyed quality is there. So Johnny's saying that he got the acidity back and underneath. Christine's now joining us. Hey, Christine. Hello there. Yeah. Okay, so higher, medium plus acidity, a light, medium, or robust body. Is this skim milk, 2% milk, or whole milk? Where does this fall? Is this easy and sheeting? Does it just kind of blanket across the mouth and rush back and done? Is it something that has a little bit more texture and volume in the mouth, or is it pretty rich and full? And Susan's noting that there's no real wet wool quality to the aroma or the palate, and therefore we can kind of rule out Chenin Blanc, which is great. So that you're looking for the tells, that you make this kind of spectrum of varietals that it might be, and then you start to pick at those varietals in particular, looking for their specific tells. And if they're not there, like low acid for Viognier or the woolly element for the Chenin Blanc, you can start to rule those out. And that's a pretty bold move there, Christine. That's great. You're in a Zoom webinar tonight, but also have us on in the background. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. Susan, you're noting a 3% moderation of the skim 2% into whole. So it's not, yes, I would agree, it's not full-blown whole milk experience or full body, but it is richer than a sort of medium. So again, kind of medium plus body. And Johnny's saying the same thing, 2%, between 2% and whole. Yeah, this is a fuller wine. It is fuller, and you're getting that density. Let's go back to the appearance and then also reference that with respect to what it feels like in your palate. But is it sheeting fast? Is it running quickly? Here, let me give you a better view. You can kind of see the legs forming, and they're going relatively slow. Yeah, there's some. They're not fast, and they are formed. They're not syrupy thick, so this is not the richest wine, the most robust wine, but it is tending more toward a full-bodied, robust wine than not. Jonathan's saying that it pairs really well with kettle potato chips. The acid does help with both the salt and perhaps a little bit of the fattiness that's on the chip. but also the toasty chip quality goes really nice with that oaky element. I mean, if this is oaked Chardonnay, buttered popcorn and Chardonnay is like one of the happy moments in your life, just kind of sitting with a bowl of buttered popcorn, totally accessible to everyone, and a really fine regal Chardonnay that has a good amount of some of that malolactic fermentation and some oak. You are in a happy place. Also, champagne does the same kind of experience for you. That's, you can while away a day just doing that. Okay, so we have moderate plus texture, we have moderate plus acidity, and what do you get by way of fruit, earth, and wood on the flavor profile, the spectrum of what you're tasting, the flavors you're perceiving? Yeah, fruit, what do you guys got? There's definitely some fruit quality. White peach, cool. Getting some of that lemon certainly on the palate. And then ripe peach and citrus from Kathy, yep. So the peachy quality and the citrus is there. Then there's an abundance of secondary characteristics, also known as tertiary characteristics, and that's coming through in the way of that wood element and some of that malolactic fermentation. So the wood, as I was talking about earlier too, the presentation of European and American wood, and European woods will give you sort of that cedared element, sometimes some more of those spicy aromas and elements. You'll get vanillin and dill and other things from American wood. I oftentimes get kind of a corn cob, popcorn, buttery element that goes with the malolactic fermentation and the oak, and I'm picking up some of that here. So malolactic fermentation is the process by which malic acid is transformed into lactic acid, and think about a green apple acid versus milk's acid. Milk's acid is a little bit softer and rounder. So I think we might have a situation here where we have a partial malolactic fermentation where we have some high acid, some of that malic acid, bright acid, and we have some of that softer acid here to give this some kind of verve, and that buttery element is there. It's not so prominent as to be dominant, but it is present. And Jan's picking up a little bit of cedared element, yes. So I think there's some nice moneyed wood cedar kind of quality here, and a lovely element of that buttered quality. Jan's picking up some green pepper. Wow. Jan, are you sure you're not drinking a Sauvignon Blanc? Because your descriptions are nailing that. Candy's asking about Virginia. We can certainly talk about place, right? So let's do that. And Isabel's pointing out that we're 20-something minutes in, and so the wine needs to change if it's to follow suit with all the other wines and all of our other tastings. And I don't know. It's staying pretty true to form for me. It hasn't changed dramatically. It's bone dry at the finish. Susan's noting that it's earthy, lemony, pineapple, yeasty element. It's nice. That's perhaps an indication of lees, or the yeast cells that were spent or deadened in the process of fermentation that were allowed to hang out with the wine. It gives it creaminess, it gives it richness, some texture, and a little yeasty aroma, and a butter quality coming from that malolactic fermentation. So the picture we're painting is of Chardonnay. We talked about Chenin Blanc, we talked about Viognier, and kind of ruled both those out. And hey, Ashley, how are you? So where then would you get Chardonnay? And is Virginia in the running is a question, and the answer is certainly absolutely. Virginia makes some lovely Chardonnay. So Chardonnay from Virginia, Chardonnay from Burgundy, Chardonnay from California, Chardonnay from Washington, Chardonnay from Oregon, Chardonnay from Chile, Argentina, South Africa, Chardonnay from Australia, really Chardonnay from Italy. Anywhere in the world that makes wine, somebody's making some Chardonnay. But as we dial this in and to go with the Kestenbaum's question about this much acid with Chardonnay. Yeah, you can absolutely get this much acidity with Chardonnay, especially where you might have more of the winemaker's hand. And Ashley, if you're back in town, you got to definitely come and see us. Thank you. Yes, you got to tell us all about all of your stories and travels with winemaking in the world. We'd love to hear them. Please come by. And to Susan's question, kind of where we're starting to kind of break this down, if we're talking about Chardonnay, new versus old world, as I kind of alluded to before, is this old world warmer site, warmer kind of vintage perhaps? Is this new world cooler site? We're using more of a French oak descriptors on this with the cedar and elements, so it's a place that's making some quality wine with some beautifully expressed fruit that is riper. And so if we're in Burgundy, for example, we're probably not in the colder climes of Chablis, but we're more likely in the Macon Macon subregion of Burgundy, more in the south, or maybe even in the Beaune, Côte de Beaune, so the sort of premium spot there. We could be in California, as we noted. Would we be in Oregon? There's a chance that we might be in Oregon on a warmer side. And Rachel, yeah, high acid equaling cool site, exactly. And Rachel knows all about a cool site with respect to where she makes Oceano's Chardonnay, right on the coast of California. And you can get some of this ripeness, right, Rachel? And yet also have that high, bright, vibrant acidity. Jonathan's noting that I have to enjoy more prime rib, kale, and blue cheese. That's a good combination. South Africa, I was absolutely thinking that. You know, you could be in South Africa getting some of that coastal influence, some of that warmth, and so you're getting the play between the two. I like that call more than I like Burgundy in this case. I think some malolactic fermentation, some great oak usage, some ripe fruit, some high acid element coming because of a cool site. Puts me more coastal, so I like a California call, I like a South Africa call, I like Mornington Peninsula kind of Australian call. I like a warmer place with cold site. So yeah, Kathy, I like South Africa too. And Melanie, I think you just said that you just saw the label when you opened it, so you can't guess. So good, yeah. Okay, stay out of that one. And the Swanbergs are leaning more towards Sauvignon Blanc because of the tartness. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think the overall profile for me leads a little bit more toward Chardonnay. Oh, Jonathan, you were talking about the ribeye preparation here with the blue cheese sauce. Yeah, that's delicious stuff. Thank you for that, yes. Okay, so Australia, South Africa, California. The quality of the fruit here doesn't take me as much to Oregon. Maybe Washington, but not necessarily as prominent. Washington, kind of Walla Walla. In that area, you're going to get a little bit more weightiness, I think, and a little less acidity, generally speaking. And so we're thinking about those places in the world. South Africa, giving us... I think you'd get pretty good points for any one of those places. There's a salinity to this now. It's kind of poking through, especially because I'm kind of looking for it from that coastal influence element. But when you taste it, have another taste. There's just a density, especially for the first 2/3 of the taste of the fruit on your palate. It's pretty persistent. It's pretty well-made wine. This is wine that comes from some older vine material, right? It's coming from fruit that is mature. It's not just easy going. And as a result, it merited a dollop of some quality oak, I think. if I'm reading this wine right. And Alicia's noting that she's torn on place. I am too. I mean, the description that we're putting out there, again, I could be comfortable saying, I think this is, I'm a little less comfortable saying this is maybe Mornington Peninsula or Southern Australian coastal Chardonnay than I am sort of South African Chardonnay, or I really think we could be talking about, I mean, Sonoma Coast maybe, but I like the sort of Santa Cruz idea, and sort of a Central Coast high mountain kind of production that would be there too. Vintage-wise, this is not an old wine, right? We're not seeing any kind of tawnying in color. We're pretty bright and vibrant, and the fruit is pleasant. It's getting a little bit richer, yes, to your point, Kathy. And Jan's making the note, too, that it's getting more complex. So it is changing a little bit, Isabel. It took a little bit extra time. It's 30 minutes, not fully the 22-minute, 24-minute that it usually is. But Alicia's noting that doesn't really feel like California to her, so maybe you want to lean more towards South Africa. And 17 and 18 being vintage, yeah, that's a good call. I think it's a present release kind of 18. There's a little element toward the finish where you get some spice and the wine sort of just goes a little bit wonky. By wonky, I mean it's just a little bit disjointed. That first 2/3 is there's a density and core of that fruit and the wood's wrapped up in it. And then the fruit sort of parts company with the wood, and the wood lingers, and then the fruit pops back in and the wood lingers. And so I think that we're looking at kind of a funny interplay with this wine, suggesting that it might be a little bit more youthful. And yeah, it would pair well with shellfish, and you could get shellfish with a little bit of creamy sauce or kind of an oily, herby vinaigrette would be really great with this. Alicia's playing the game more than the wine and saying the price point is more South Africa than perhaps California. And so Susan's saying South Africa Chardonnay 2017. And that's a good call. I think that's where Kathy was headed too. So, And Isabel's really pushing us, which is great. As my next question too, and I don't have a good answer for this. I don't know how we would actually parse that out. But Stellenbosch with Paul, or are we talking Swartland, for example? But Stellenbosch would be probably my general guess if I was going to go South Africa. And I'm not 100% convinced. Oh, comment about the malolactic fermentation. Yes, Susan made that comment. Rachel, yes. I think we're talking about malolactic fermentation to some degree, not a complete 100% malolactic fermentation. This has that kind of zingy, vervy acid that you might get from some malic acid, but then there's a creaminess and a richness that we alluded to with respect to perhaps some lees aging, perhaps also some of that malolactic fermentation, and we're definitely getting butter quality, but it's not tremendous amounts of diacetyl, the aroma that kind of, or the compound that gets put off from the secondary fermentation of malolactic fermentation to give you that buttered popcorn quality. There's just a hint of sort of that buttery element. And I think that's an indication that we have some malolactic fermentation for sure, but I'm not positive it's 100%. And you see that technique used in riper places like California to mitigate some of that ripe fruit and keep some freshness. And Chris, do we rule out White Zinfandel? I think probably before we began, yes, we ruled that out. But if you're finding some notes and you'd like to share, please, by all means. So, all right, some of you are on South Africa, Stellenbosch, Western Cape, Chardonnay 2017, according to Kathy. And every time you go against Kathy, you get something wrong. But I'm going to stick to California. I like the sort of Santa Cruz high elevation. There's also kind of like a wine called Sabella that's made by Hansel in Sonoma. Kind of tastes like this. Mount Eden makes some beautiful wines that are just Burgundian kind of with that oak usage, but then there's that ripeness and some freshness and acidity. So I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go 2018 with a wine for that call. Anybody else? Kathy's changing hers to 2018 as well. That's fair. Okay, cool. I'm wrong, which is really good. And this is, yep, South African Chardonnay, 2019, De Morganson DMZ. This is a really good, lovely production of wine, and Tony really loves this wine, so it's not a surprise that we got a chance to try this. That's cool. Great wine, fun wine, great price, and really quality kind of drinking Chardonnay. It's really good stuff. And Kathy, yes, you do rock it. You got it. You nailed it. It's from Stellenbosch, South Africa, Chardonnay. You see where that ripeness is there and the acidity is there. Really cool wine. It's fun. Terraced hillside vineyards and the views of both the Indian and Atlantic Ocean. So we're getting that coastal quality. It'll be beautiful and really fun. And so, thanks everybody for sharing. Yeah, their Chenin Blanc's really delicious too. They make some lovely wines. And Alicia, to your question, yeah, we get to blind taste again tomorrow night. I will be joining the Walsh family crew and doing another one of their Drink Well series with some great, hopefully great wines. I'm sure they're going to be great wines. 3 of them that will be blind. And so if you are of mind to join us, I think that's tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And look forward to seeing you guys then. If not then, I will see you back here on Thursday. We'll do another wine. And Rachel, you are always welcome. And this is going to be fun. So Kistenbaum's Drink Well is the program that every Friday night the Walsh family wine folks put on, and sometimes it's a blind wine tasting, sometimes it's just a specialty tasting that they walk you through based on a theme. And Brandy, you're also welcome. They're great. You know, Nate and Sarah Walsh do an exceptional job of just making great wine, but also building community around wine. And their series Drink Well, which they launched when COVID started, has been running strong and is just a great way to spend a Friday evening. And you join Drink Well by visiting their site or venturing out to the winery themselves, and I believe they can ship wine to you. If not, you can certainly drop by and pick up those wines. They're great. So, and I agree, Rachel, they're super fun. Thank you, Alicia. Facebook Live on their page, and you can pick up wine tomorrow. Otherwise, they deliver locally and ship as well. So, if you are available tomorrow and you can pick up those wines and want to play along, please do so. And if not, then we'll see you again on Thursday. As I noted last time, we do have a whole series of wines picked out almost all the way through February. So if you're around throughout the remainder of this year here and you want to pick up wines for the subsequent weeks, you can do that. We'll be closed or not doing these. We won't be closed, but we will not be doing these programs on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve as they fall on Thursday this year. And another fine news, pretty excited, I think next week reservations are opening for the cabanas outside. The progress is coming along. We have 7 structured cabanas that'll be nearly finished, hopefully by the start of next week, so we can get them outfitted and ready and opening them on Wednesday. And so that's what's in the works for us. And we'll also move one of our old cabana tents to the front patio and try to situate that to have a little bit of heating space and a protection from the wind. So for those of you that want to dine outside, we should have some good options for you next week. Until that point, be well, continue those connections with wine and food with your friends, and I will see you back here on Thursday. Cheers, everybody.